You can start. You can do that, and then go to live, and then you're immediately live. Yeah, that's cool.
Because we're live.
Kyle did send you a lot of questions. He said.
He did?
I can invite him, shouldn't I?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, because I didn't get any questions from him. I got them from Keith. I wonder if they went to a different email address. I don't know why they would.
I think he'll be here in a minute.
Okay.
You work the best if you don't know what you get asked, right?
Yeah, whatever.
you need the pressure.
Well, the funny thing is too is how I'm always like a big planner and say all that kind of stuff, and you got to plan your animation, you got to do all this and everything. Hey Kyle, what's happening?
Wow.
But for this, I feel like you're right. Is like I've been kind of at the seat of my pants because normally there's planning and there ain't no planning on here. It's basically it's a paper. So yeah, this has been a learning experience to say the least. We were just saying that Andy and I have been doing this, I don't know, 4 hours at least, trying to get this working, trying to get a chat of some sort to work back and forth, because there was about 13 people, I think, that were signed up, and I'm sure there'll be more that just pop it on and off. And so we were trying to figure out the best thing, and oh my goodness, it seemed so easy at first, and then it just wasn't. Hey Keith, what's happening? And so it's been trying to put it all together, so it's been insane. So you got the link, Keith. That's awesome. Very cool. I'm just waiting just another minute, and Andy, if you'll see if it's gonna go live, right?
Yeah.
It's live now.
I don't know.
Yeah, because you guys are all in the with me, but I don't know. Is it live now?
Yeah, maybe you should change the size.
Live.
A bit small.
Is it really small?
Yeah, I'll do it right. Just hold on a second.
Okay, you're gonna take care of that.
I'm just waking up here, so.
Where are you?
So what's the time?
It's 7 a.m. here right now. I'm in South Korea. So.
All right, cool, very cool. And Veronica, where are you?
I'm from Indonesia.
Okay, all right.
And it's 6 a.m.
Yeah, cool.
6 a.m.
Yeah, 6 a.m.
And in Germany, it's almost 1 a.m., right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're trying to
But
figure.
There's a birthday party going on, so.
No.
Right after, I'll have my beer.
Yeah, we tried to figure out like a good time that would be kind of beneficial for just about everybody. So.
Yeah, this works. I think it's a good time.
Good. I mean, yeah, like for me, it's Saturday night at 7 o'clock. It shows that I like to go out and party Saturday night. But I guess I did that too much last night, so I have no excuse. Is it live now? Are we all live? Right?
Yeah, we are live.
Good. Okay, cool. All right. Well, for just the two of you here that are with me that don't know me, I'm going to give like a kind of a history of myself and where I've gone and where I'm going and all that kind of stuff. And then Keith, thanks a ton for sending those questions. I'm going to look at and I'll answer those too. And then if anybody has any, I'm going to have the chat open, and also there's going to be questions that you can look on, this Q&A, so you can just click on a question there, and it'll pop up right there. Oh yeah, and Kyle, I see that you got questions too. I didn't get those though. Did you send that to Mullethead? The Mullethead 0? Because if not, I mean, you can just type them in here, and then I'll just answer them. Ah, there we go. That's probably where all the other ones went. So I'm gonna...
Is my mic working?
Yeah, your mic's working.
Oh, okay, I could just talk.
I know. It's like I see you got a microphone there. Yeah. So I just have a few of you that are just with me, and everyone else just kind of watching, and hopefully asking questions that way. Let's see. Oh yeah, now I got them. Okay, cool. Very cool. All right, so I'll look at those. So basically, and let me change one little thing too. I'll be on the chat also. So I've been in animation now for 25 years, I think. So it's been quite a long time, and I've done everything from. I started as an animator, and I started in architecture, and I was an architecture for probably about 5 years in school, and then I saw a short film by PDI, which now they're DreamWorks, and it was Gas Planet. And I remember seeing it. If you guys have seen that, it's an awesome little short. It's just basically about these little creatures with these long noses, and they suck in these like flowers, like balloons, and then they end up farting them out. And I saw that, and I was literally sitting there. First of all, I love fart jokes, so I'm 40 years old, really. Don't let the gray hairs kind of fool you. But I was watching it, and I literally was glued, saying, "I want to do that." I had no idea what it was, and it was so strange that when I tell this story, that I was so naive to the fact that I didn't think animators got paid, I guess. Because when I watched like Bugs Bunny or something like that, I never thought that this came from human beings. I never thought about that. I never thought that that could be a job, that could be something I could do. And then I remember right after that, I went up to the library and saw Animation Magazine, and I remember saying, "There's a magazine about animation? Are you kidding me?" And it just happened to be the issue that had schools in it. And I was like, "Man, I got to figure this out." And this was like I said, about 20 years ago, 25 years ago. And right at that time, there's none of this online stuff was going on. I don't even know I think the internet was just kind of beginning, really, at that point. And I ended up going to the school in Minneapolis. And I remember I told my parents, after almost 6 years of architecture, because it's a 6-year program, and I said, "Yeah, I'm going to drop out and become an animator." And I remember my mom actually chased me around my yard. They're like, "No, I can't believe you did." And it's like, "I love this and things." So I ended up going to this little animation school, and I don't even want to call it an animation school because it was basically a building with computers in it. And I had to teach myself. And so, like, the 9 old men are the ones that really taught me. The Illusion of Life. I had to go through 2 books because one of them is like I just looked so much that the pages were falling out. But then I did little odd jobs. I worked at like a software development company. I worked for a medical animation company, and then I did a short film, and I ended up getting a job at Disney. And so that was pretty cool. That I got there. Yeah, it was it was weird. It was a school that it was called. What was it called? Multimedia something. The school was called School of Communication Arts, and it was in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And yeah, it was just a building with computers. And at that time it was 3D Studio, and it was just called 3D Studio, not like Release 3 or Max or anything like that. It was you type in at the DOS prompt 3DS, and that's when it started. So yeah, it was that long ago. But I did a short film, and it got into different schools, and then I ended up going to Disney, and I worked for Disney Imagineering for about 3 years, and so I did a lot of stuff for like theme parks and everything like that. And like if you're waiting in line or anything, I did a lot of that animation. We also did a lot of virtual reality attractions. I got lucky that I didn't have to do like runs and jumps like game animation. I actually did the cutscenes. So I got to work on this Hercules project where I did Pain and Panic. They were so fun to do, and so I got to do everything that happened in between. But I was there for about 3 years, and then wanted to. This is such a weird segue, but I wanted to get into film, and so I went to a game company. I don't know why that happened, but I ended up working at Naughty Dog for about 6 months, and I am not a gamer. It's something that I love animation, but games, I'm just like, wasn't really into it. And if you're at a game company, you got to be. Those guys are insane for games, and that's great, but it wasn't for me. And so I was there for about 6 months, and then one of my friends sent me an email and said, "You got to check out this cool-looking animation that they're going to start doing in Dallas, Texas," and it was Jimmy Neutron. And I'm like, that sounds pretty cool. So I sent my reel there, and literally the next day, I got a call back from them, and they said, "Are you still interested in working here?" And I'm like, "Let's see, I just sent it yesterday. No, I don't want to work there anymore. I've totally changed." So I went down, and this was so cool. It was DNA Productions, and it was so cool going to that building. It's like my ideal is this like garage band, kind of grungy. Veronica talking about starting, a studio. This was like we had literally instead of walls, we had cardboard. Yeah, they did. Yeah, I mean, there's a sad part of the story too, but it was great. I mean, I was there. Boy, I think there was maybe 25 people, I think, and there was 10 animators that we were all hired at the same time. Within 2 weeks, I actually got promoted to supervising animator. I'd done like, I think, not even 2 shots. And so what that meant is that I had to do my own footage and supervise the whole animation for the entire film. And that was hard. I mean, because that was the first time that I really started to be in a leadership position with animation, and I'm like, hey, I'm still learning this too. But I was learning all kinds of processes and how to make everyone better, because as a supervisor, your job is supposed to be make it look like every shot was done by the same person. And man, that's hard because you've got 25 people, 25 different animators, all with a slightly different style, and you're trying to keep them, on the same page. It's a little hard, but that ended up being really cool because what Nickelodeon did was they had a television show already ready to go. And so as soon as we were done with the film, we ramped right into the television show. There was all kinds of issues with that because we had animated in basically Lightwave. It was a plugin called Project Messiah that was in Lightwave, and we couldn't have more than 4 characters in a scene. I mean, and it was like moving. Can you imagine like moving your character like in concrete? It was terrible. It was really terrible. Yeah, that's true. For anyone that's just viewing, there's a Q&A feature that you can ask questions. And there we go. Yeah, see, I got one there. I've got a couple of them. So really cool. Okay. So yeah, if you got any questions, please do ask it up there, and then I'm going to answer them. So we rolled right onto the television show. And working in that Lightwave was so hard, and I was trying to show producers, hey, there's no way we're going to be able to do these shots, these television shots. It was hard enough to do the film. We got to go into something like Maya. So I had to do a test that showed how we could have more than 4 characters in the scene. I actually had, I think, 15 Jimmies in the scene, and said, look, I'm moving my camera around them and everything like that. And they're like, hey, I guess we can do that. So let's rig all the characters in Maya. So we had to do all of that. So that was insane. And in the process of doing that, they also said, oh, by the way, do you want to start directing too? And my whole goal when I first started animating, like when I saw that Gas Planet thing, like I said, I want to do that. I really wanted to direct. And I didn't think I was ready for it, though, because I remember my first session, which when I sat down with storyboard artists, and they're like, hey, what do you think about this? And I'm like, pretty drawings. I have no idea. It's like I didn't know like how to cut. I didn't know how to not jump the line, that kind of stuff. And so I learned everything on the fly. And the one thing, like what I do with all my students, and a couple of you know this, is that I always say that if you don't know something, you really, really have to dig deep and try to figure it out. And with animation, it's the same way. So I really like to not just figure out the principles, but figure out why things work, how to get into acting, how to get the best out of your performance, that kind of thing. And for directing, what I ended up doing was I would watch a movie, and every time the camera cut, I paused and I sketched it. And so I have like an entire sketchbook filled of But you can see it's just tons of drawings. So every single shot that's in the movie, it's like, so I did all kinds of. This is a new movie right here. I did three movies. I did Jaws, I did The Graduate, Notorious, which is Hitchcock, and then Cool Hand Luke. And so that was, man, Jaws took me 2 years to do. But I learned so much about camera cutting. I learned so much about reframing and everything like that. And so that was pretty cool. So, so what I did was 3 seasons of Jimmy Neutron, directing, and as we directed, we did everything from directing actors all the way to the final mix. And so I had at one point, and there was only 2 of us doing this. Keith Alcorn was the other one, and we had 10 shows going on at the same time. Man, that was insane. You know, a lot of fun. And we had all the animation done in house. All the animators. We were doing. I think each animator was doing 750 frames a week, and
Crap.
that's insane. And the thing is, we had a workflow that worked really well. You know, we would do. I would pitch it. There was one supervisor per team. There was 2 teams of I think 15 animators, and 15 or 12. I don't remember. But one supervisor for that. So each director had a supervisor and a team, and we would pitch the shots, and then they would do blocking. So I would see, you know, basically 5 minutes a week of blocking done at the beginning of the week, and so we would look at an entire sequence all blocked out. And that was a great way for me to kind of see it first, and then make sure everyone's going down the right path. Because I mean, you guys can imagine that if you're going to start on a scene, and then all of a sudden, you know, just get into it and you don't show anybody, and you're like, hey, I've only been working on this for 4 days. I've been killing myself. What do you think? And the directors go, nah, that's nothing that I wanted at all. And then you just lost 4 days of work. Whereas instead, hey, let's work on it for a couple of hours. Show me blocking and see if it's going down the right path. And you say, yeah, that's awesome. Or wait a minute, because I had one animator that did a really fun shot, and it was really great, but it was finished, and it didn't fit. And I remember seeing it going, man, I hate doing this to you, but I love this shot, but it just doesn't fit in the show. And he's like, really, man? And I'm like, you wish you showed me blocking, because he literally worked all week on it. And that killed me, you know, as a director too, because I was in my head, I'm thinking 2 things. Oh my God, I got to tell him that it's not going to be in there, or how can I make this work? And it just wasn't working. And so that was the lesson that I told him. I was like, I guess you got to learn to block a little bit, you know. So we did 3 seasons there, and we were saying about DNA. The next thing that I was going to do was I was slated to direct a film for Warner Brothers. And so we did a lot of development for that. We did 2 maquettes, 2 like models, and then we actually modeled the character in 3D, and I even animated it. We ended up going in, pitching it. It was weird because how that whole process worked, instead of just green-lighting it from the script, because the script was not solid at all. The idea was great, but the script was really weak. And so we were trying to make the script better, but there was some weird red tape producer stuff. And we had a ton of great art, and I'm telling you what, this movie would have been awesome. And we pitched it to Warner Brothers to go the next step, you know, to go into animatic and to start hiring actors and everything. And they loved it and said, hey, what do you need, $6-7 million? And we're like, oh my God, this is going to work. And then they read the script and said, it's not as good as the pitch was, and so it kind of died. And not long after that, DNA died. You know, so this company that I love, that, you know, and it's such a family, we all had to go our separate ways. But it's kind of cool in the fact that now a lot of those people are at Pixar and Disney and Blue Sky and DreamWorks all over the place, and so it's kind of cool. I mean, we all say how great it was, and we wish we could have been back there, but you know. But after that, I moved to Southern California, and I worked on Back at the Barnyard as a director, also a supervising director this time. And we actually got nominated for an Emmy. We got nominated for an Emmy for Best Directing, which was really cool. Didn't win that one. And then the second time, we got nominated for Best Show and won. And so that was kind of cool. And then I worked on Planet Sheen, which was a spin-off of Jimmy Neutron. And that's where I got more into the producing part of it, too. And, man, there's a lot of stuff that goes on that I just don't ever want to know about when it comes to producing. I'm just like, I just want to, like, write and direct and animate. This other kind of stuff is not really for me. And, yeah, that's the part of animation that I don't really like. But someone's got to do it. And so I did that for a little bit, and I don't take credit for it because the show did not turn out the way that I expected it to be. And so that didn't even last a season. And so since then, I've been working with Animation Mentor, you know, off and on for about 8 years. and now I'm starting my own thing, this animation workflow thing, and writing. And the last part is I'm probably going to be co-directing a live-action film in the summer. We got to get our budget together and get all that going, so we'll see what happens with that. But so anyway, animation, so what now? I'm going to start answering some questions and everything like that. And I know Keith, you asked me some questions. I'm going to look at that, and I want to also look at Kyle, what Kyle said too. So let me go to Keith, and you had some questions here. So let me go out to this. And I like it. He said, "You got 3 questions actually." So Keith's first question said about polish. I was wondering what you make sure to have done before you start your polishing on a shot. What steps you need to finish before the polishing starts, and how do you personally go about to polish shots? Now that's going to be a very long answer for me because, but that's cool because here's what I always feel is that I've been teaching class 3 and class 4 at Animation Mentor for a long time, and 2 of my former students are here too, and what I see what happens is it's not in the polish stage, but it's in the stage right before it. It's in that blocking plus stage. And what I see is that not enough is put into blocking plus before polish. Now, and I know the mindset because, I feel the same way, is that when I start working on a shot, I'm like, oh, I just want to make it move, and I'm going to do this, and look, and now it's in step mode. It looks really cool in step mode because it's going like this and everything, and now let's go in the spline, and what the heck happened? It's like, have you had that happen where in step mode it looks so cool, and then you put it in spline and you're like, that sucks. What happened? And the thing that I feel that happens is that in that blocking plus phase is that you just don't have enough keyframes because in step, if you work in step, that it changes over 1 frame where actually it could be 8 frames. And so we're seeing a different timing, a different spacing, and then when all those frames are there and you go into spline, then it becomes really apparent. Now, if you don't work in step mode, if you work in just spline mode, I feel like you're more layering, and to me, I know there's some people that can do it. There's a couple of animators at Pixar especially that they can do that really well. Most of us mortals can't. We have to see it. It's almost like we have to be able to understand, okay, this is going to be an anticipation, I need to do this, instead of layering, like, okay, I'm going to do my body, now I'm going to do my arm, now I'm going to, like that. I think what has to happen is in that blocking stage, you start thinking, and you really, and I break it down. I mean, I go into steps where, like, right after my blocking, my first blocking, which is basically storytelling poses, not everything that's in there. I tell my students, I say, if it doesn't tell the story, then don't put it in blocking. And what I mean by that is, if you're going to tell a story, you're not going to say, a guy takes 1 step, then another step, then another, and then he pulls a step back, and then he prepares, and he starts to lift out, he starts to go down, and then he gets down to lift up the box, and then he picks it up halfway, and then he goes back up, and then he starts to push it, and then he finishes the push. That's not a story. A story is a guy walks in, picks up a box, and throws it. So that's the thing. It's like, so those are my storytelling poses. Those are the poses that that first pass when I go through, I do that. And what this does is now I'm like building my foundation. It's like construction. You don't start painting walls until you put them up. Now you got to put a foundation first. You got to put the 2x4s up, then you got to put the walls up, then you got to paint it. And so that's the way I look at it too. And so after that phase, then we go into the blocking plus. I mean, there's some other phases, other steps that can go in there. But in blocking plus, I'll start thinking about my anticipation. I'll start thinking about my transitions. And in my transitions, I'm thinking of everything. I'm thinking of spacing. I'm thinking of arcs. I'm thinking of drag and overlap when I'm doing my individual pose. So like when I do my main breakdown, I start thinking, okay, I'm going to drag the head when I go like this. And so my breakdown is going to be my body's like this, my head's dragging back like that. So I put all of that into that blocking plus, into step mode. And so if you look at my animation, it's like I have a key almost every other frame. Most of it is like every 4 frames, but almost every other frame. And so when I go into polish, it looks pretty similar. Now, When I do go into polish, though, I think I have a very methodical approach to it. And this is the hardest thing, is that if you're in the splines and everything, do you think of when you first watch your animation, you're like, okay, the first time, and you're writing down notes. Remember I was talking earlier about planning. I'll write down notes, but I bet you this is what happens to most of you. If you'll write down a note and you'll say, all right, cool, I'm going to get back into I'm going to get back in here, and all right, I'm going to make this change. I'm going to make this, all right, so I made his head move. All right, now I did that. All right, let's render. Let's see what it looks like to make a change. What happens if you do that, though? When you do that, you go like this. You go, oh, I didn't know the leg did that. Oh, man, let me write that. Oh, and look, his arm on frame 50. What's going on there? I didn't see that. So you took one thing off, and you just added two more. And then if you do that again, you're never going to finish the list. So that's what I call noodling. I feel like you don't really know what you're looking for. And so in the polish pass, what I like to do is, how many times does an audience see your shot? How many times do they see it? One time, right? And they don't see it by itself. They see other shots around it, right? So what I like to do is, at the very first time, all right, I put it in the splines. And the other thing is, too, I make sure that my feet aren't sliding before I do that. But I'll put it in the splines, and I'll make a render, and I'll make sure it doesn't loop. And I'll literally scoot back and look at it from back here. Because, like, as a director, I literally like to take a step back to look at the bigger picture. And so I'll literally scoot back, look at it one time, and see if there's anything that bumps me. Because I'm looking at it from an audience perspective. Now, I said an audience perspective, not an animator's perspective. And this is very important, because as an animator, you're going to say, oh, man, the spacing looked bad, and the timing was terrible, and oh, man, that pose, and oh, everything moved at the same time. You got to look at it the first time not as an animator, but as an audience. And what you do is you just look at it for entertainment value and say, is there anything that bumps me, something that doesn't work as an audience member? And what that can be is something as easy as, an arm kind of making a weird move, or like with IK, when IK pulls away. So anything that's literally a mistake. Or sometimes you might even see the head go, oh, like that. So I'll write that down. So there might not be any of that. There might be a lot of, oh man, my spacing, but from an audience perspective. But I'll still write that down as a bump. Then I'll move in closer, literally, and loop it. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for very specific things. Okay, and this is the part that I think when you're doing polish, I think if you can do this, because here's what happens, I know for myself, is I'm always thinking, my performance sucks, I need to make this better, my animation looks terrible, how am I going to do this? And that's all in my head when I'm looking at it, instead of saying, you know what, take that fear, take that doubt out of your mind, and when you look at it, you're gonna say, okay, I'm only going to look at spacing. I'm only going to look at drag and overlap. I'm only going to look at arcs. Man, and if you can stay focused like that, when you put better, what's going to happen? You're going to put better drag. You're going to put better spacing. You're going to put better overlap. You're going to put better arcs. So that's going to make your animation better. So you're automatically going to do that. So what I like to tell students is, like, when you do that, get so focused that you're going to look at it about 10 times. You're going to loop it through about 10 times. But you're only looking at arcs is the first thing, because that's the easiest, right? Because we can see if it's arc, like the character's nose, or if the arm or anything like that. You can see if it's an arc. You can see if it goes like that, or if it's not quite the arc that you want. And so I'll go through and say, oh, something's weird with my body there. All right, what frame is that? All right, 40 to 45. Check arm. So I'll do that, and I'll look through. Like I said, I'll look through it about 10 times. And then after I do that 10 to maybe 15 times, then I'll look and say spacing. Now, when I'm first looking through like arcs, there might be something, and it's going to jump in your head, because I mean, we're all, I like to call us shiny object people. That we're always like, hey, what? It's raining today, and then what are we talking about? So this is what's going to happen, is that you're going to watch your animation, and you're going to say, oh man, that spacing there is, what's that? And you literally have to, whoa, hold on. Only looking at arcs. Because I'm going to come back to it, but if you just focus on that, you'll start to see it better. And not just in your polish, but in your next shot and blocking plus. Because now you're training your eye. And so I like to look at this as not only making this shot better, but it's making me better, and it's going to make my next shots better because I'm not going to make same mistakes. I'm going to say, oh, wait a minute. I remember that arc that didn't work there, and it's because I didn't put it in my blocking plus, so you're going to put it in there at that time. And so I look at my arcs first, and then I go through and look at my spacing. And my spacing, what I look at is it even? You know, I think that when we say computer animation, like I give this note a lot, is it looks like computer animation. And what I mean by that, it looks like the computer animated it. And the computer, as you know, is a terrible animator. You know, I mean, it's great at ones and zeros, but at keyframes, computer, and I know some producers say, well, just hit the animate button. You know, yeah, wish. You know, we have to do everything. We've got to think of everything. You know, so it's terrible at saying, like, if I have a keyframe here and a keyframe here, it's just going to go like that. You know, it's going to do basically a straight line. Here's my key, here's my next key. So I look at things, does it have an even spacing? Does it go slow and then fast? Or does it go fast and then slow? And so I look at that and try to make sure that I focus on that. So even with my head, okay, I got a nice arc, but it feels very even. All right, so I note that down. I start writing more as I go, okay, at this. Now I've got about 6 or 7 notes, whatever, but I'm only looking at spacing. Then the next thing that I look at right after that is very similar to spacing, but I like to call it speeds. And I had a director at Disney. This guy's awesome, and it's weird though. He had emphysema and smoked, and so his voice really rough. Hey, Gasaway, you know, that's how he kind of was. And it was great because he said one time with my animation, he goes, I think you got to have different speeds. You got to have speeds. And I was like, and I thought of the movie Rocky 2 or Rocky 3, when Burgess Meredith was yelling at Rocky when Rocky couldn't catch the chicken. They're like, no, we got speed. I mean, it sounded just like it. I'm like, what are you talking about? But what he meant was everything happens at the same time. That's bad. You don't want everything to happen at the same time. You want it to be like, if I'm just going to even just do a little, like a look here, see how my arms are going to come at a different speed, you know, like that. And so my body might get there before, and then my head, and then my arms, and then even my fingers, you know, so everything's going to be at a different speed. So I look at this. I look, does a keyframe look like it goes, does the animation look like it goes from one keyframe to the next? You know, like everything hits at the same time. And I'm not talking about offsets. I'm not talking about going into the graph editor and making offset. I'm talking about going into your in-betweens. Because here's where your in-betweens would be. It's here, and then you do your breakdown. It might be like here. You know, and then you have another key here and another key here. And so your animation would look like that. So I look at speeds. I go through my entire process looking at speeds. And so I might write down a couple more as I go. It looks like the head and the arm hit at the same time there. You know, I want to go like that. I want things to make it feel like it's happening at different times. So I write that down. And then the last thing that I write down, and these are all kind of close, but not exactly. The last thing I look at is drag and overlap. Is, you know, like, and I got to tell you, I think that's a secret to when someone says your animation doesn't have any weight to it. What that means is that your body parts don't feel like there's any weight to it. Like when I see a head even kind of go like this, it's like, no, wait a minute, this thing weighs 8 pounds. You know, so when I turn, first of all, it doesn't, my neck's strong, but it's not that strong. I mean, there's going to be a little bit of looseness to it, and so there's going to be a little bit of a drag to it. My hand, if I'm going to lift it up, it's going to have some drag to it. You know, so I've got, my arm is pulling it up, but you can see, and even my fingers have a little bit of drag. If I go like this, or if I go like that, I now have put weight on my fingers. Now they actually feel like they weigh something instead of like that. So I look at that entire piece. I look through the piece just for drag and overlap. So I write all those down. All right, and now I've got a list of, it might be 50. You know, it might be 50 or something like that. Then I'll go through, and this is the hardest part. The most difficult part of this is this, because I said a little bit about it earlier, is that, okay, so we've got all of our notes, and we've looked at it probably 50 times, right? And the audience only looks at it one time, right? So we've picked it apart pretty good. So now we go through the notes, and you know, I'm huge on lists, and I like, well, here's my list from yesterday, so there's bumps there, and I love crossing things off. And so I'll go through, all right, let's fix that little bump. All right, cool, yeah, woohoo, I got something done. And like I said, render it right away, because you're going to add more stuff. So here's the hardest thing. And this actually works because my students have all done this, is do everything on your list before doing a single playback. That's hard. Because what happens? You're like, well, wait a minute, I want to make sure that this works, right? It's like, but I've been scrubbing through, I want to see. Try not to do it, because here's what's going to happen. Chances are a lot of your notes are pretty similar, and if you go through and say fixed arm on frame 45 because of drag or whatever, and you do the drag, and then there might be a spacing that's in the same thing, you fix all of that, and then you do a playback, what's going to happen is that you've eliminated notes, because there's going to be probably some notes that you're going to have that if you looked at it one time, you know, if you change one thing and then looked at it, you're probably going to have a note. But if you fix a lot of things around it, even though the problem still maybe minutely might be there, but it's not going to bump you because you fixed something else. And so now it actually it eliminates a lot of notes that way. You know, so does that kind of make sense? Is like, because if you start to you know, like I said, like say the arm thing. If you have an arm here that's doing this, and man, the spacing's even, it looks like this. Spacing's even, and there's no drag, there's no overlap. So when I go through and I change my spacing, if I just change my spacing, I might say, oh man, now there needs to be an anticipation. The anticipation wasn't big enough. But if I go through and I change my spacing and I put a little bit of drag on it, looks like that, I probably will never even think about the anticipation because it looks good. Because there wasn't really a problem there. Okay, and so that really helps a lot. It's very difficult, I know, because you want to see what it looks like. But I think that if you can do that, that's going to help a ton. You know, so that was a really long answer, right, for just the polish.
That was a great answer. Yeah, nice.
So I'm gonna go to another question that Kyle had. Let's see. Okay, well, he's actually talking about anim flow. So let's talk about animation first. I wanna see this.
I have some animation questions that I sent on there too. They're just
I'm gonna look at. So let's see. He says, I find personally I can produce decent animation when I have a long period of time to work on it. It takes me a long time to produce something, however. I feel like in television or game production environment, I'd be constantly strapped for time. Hell yeah, for time trying to meet my deadlines. Are there workflow techniques or other ways to produce quality animation faster? Yeah, I tell you what. I mean, you know, look what we were doing, 750 frames. You know, and the quality isn't film quality, but I think it's pretty good for what we were doing. And a lot of that was workflow. A lot of that was doing the blocking first. And actually, let me take an even bigger step back. Planning first. I mean, that's the biggest thing. I made sure that everyone would, you know, listen to their shot, plan it out, maybe do some video reference. We didn't do a lot of video reference for that. We did it for some more difficult things. And then some animators started to do it and really liked it, so they kept doing it. But planning was a big thing. I had one animator that when I would pitch his shots, you know, his would usually be earlier in the sequence, and then he would go back to his desk and start working. And I remember this one time I was done pitching. It was probably like an hour later, and he's already in Maya working on the shot. And I said, "Dude, what are you doing?" He goes, "Man, I gotta animate the shot. I gotta do this." And I said, "Wait a minute, but you don't understand that when you're planning, you're actually working on your shot. Because I feel like if you hurry up and just, oh man, I got a deadline, I've got to do this really quick, what happens is you get to this point, right? You get to a certain point and you go, what am I doing? How am I going to finish this shot? What am I going to do here? Oh my God, it's Thursday and it's due tomorrow. How am I going to, you know, you start freaking out. But if you take the time at the beginning to really plan your shot, and I mean really plan, even to the point where you say, I always use a stopwatch, and there's an animation timer that you can use online too, that you can go through and actually say, and I would do this, I mean, it's like hitting a space bar. I would visualize it in my head. All right, here the character is walking up to it, and he does there at that frame. And I would look, okay, 14 frames. All right, let's do it again. I'd think about it, all right, 12 frames. All right, that's kind of, and I'll do it one more time. I'd always do it like 3 times to find the right frames. And then I'd write it down, 14 frames to do that. All right, he lifts this up and it takes 6 frames. I would be that meticulous with it. I mean, even if my drawing skills aren't that great, I mean, I can draw circles really well. But anything else, not so much. If you see a lot of my drawing, I mean, I got actually pretty good when I was doing, a ton of the, when I was saying about doing the storyboards, basically. I got pretty good at that. But in general, my stick figures are about it. And if you see them, most of them don't include legs because, hey, it looks pretty cool. And then I add the legs and the proportions all off. So I don't I stay away from that. But I write a ton of notes. So I'll say move left hand from frame 50 to 58. I mean, it's very specific. And so basically it's like a floor plan. And that doesn't take very long. And I look at it and I say, okay, here's exactly what I'm going to do. So now I feel like I'm done with my shot mentally. So all I got to do now is put in the computer. And what I used to do is I would get to that point and I would jam music and I would just crank it. So I'd go through that blocking first, and the faster you can get that blocking, and especially if you can get to the director and get that approved, you're half the battle's done already. And so yeah, that'll really speed you up by doing that. And then going through, like we talked about the blocking plus and the polish, all those parts will help you become even faster. And yeah, it's pressure filled for sure. I mean, we also did stuff on the television show that we did like we try not to have that many characters and shots. We would go to medium close up so that you wouldn't see their feet. They're walking, so you don't see their feet. That kind of stuff. I like to do more complicated camera works. Like the question that Keith, I think that you had about cameras is that animators will work with the camera a little bit. I don't know how it works like at Pixar or anything like that, but what we did was, we had a layout team, and then if the animators had to make some adjustments, they could. If they were small, if they were bigger, they would definitely come to me. But I left it up to them. Like, hey, if you want to give them a little bit more headroom, you want to pull back a little bit, that's totally fine. But your cameras will usually, at least with the placement and everything, will already be finished for you. So I think does that kind of Kyle, does that kind of help you with that question a little bit?
Yeah. I don't know. I usually plan my shots. I don't know, pretty well, but I just don't know like the ratio of what I would normally what would be done in a production environment because I've never really been in one, right? So I'm like I've once I start working, I'm a little bit worried about getting in there and at Animation Mentor I would have we did a shot for 3 months, one shot, right?
Right.
That acting shot, yep. And we had 2 weeks or something like that to plan, and I know obviously I would never have that in a production environment. Yeah. So I probably would have to produce that kind of quality in 1 week.
Yeah.
The same. Yeah. So that's mainly what I'm worried about. And so what would be the ratio, do you think, of how long would you spend on a 200 frame shot? How long would you spend on planning?
Planning, I would probably only do. Let's see, because what I like to do is, if it's in a production environment, there's one step that you don't have to do, which is the character. The very first thing, and I'm, in my course in Anim Flow, we actually take one whole week and talk about character, because the more that you can get into your character, the more that you can understand that character, the better performances that you can get. And even if you work on with Neutron, or if you work on a film or anything like that, the kind of the who, what, when, where, why, and everything that's already taken care of. So that your character has a limp, and that he's afraid of snakes, and that he loves to eat popcorn, all that kind of stuff. But I think the more that you know that, you don't have to invent it. If you're in your own shot, you kind of have to invent that. And the whole purpose for me for doing that is getting into your character. And so you're not going to lift a chair, or you're not going to run across the room, or you're not going to say a line the same way. You're going to say it different than your character would. So you want to make sure that you understand that character first. And so if you're brand new, this is your very first shot with this character, I would spend about an hour understanding that character and really thinking about it. And literally like this, thinking about the character, maybe writing down some notes about them, and figuring out kind of how they would, even before you hear your audio shot, before you hear the audio. So that you'll get more into them, because here's the thing. If you know that this person's angry and is kind of shy and agitated, that's going to, no matter what you hear now, whatever your audio is going to be, you're starting to think of it with that character in mind. You know, there'll be little things that you'll hear in the audio that you'll add to it, but if you have that character already, you know, he might be a little bit agitated like this, and now you're thinking of him like that, then you hear the line, and what that does is that makes such a much better acting choice. And that's a ton of the, and I got to tell you, I think that is a ton of the work, you know, is, because here's what happens. Okay, normally you might hear the audio first, and then you're like, what the hell am I going to do? Okay, the director said to do this, now I'm going to do this, and you start thinking, and then you're just sketching or whatever, and you might even get to a point where it becomes Wednesday and say, oh man, I got a better idea. You know, and what I like to say is understand everything up front. You know, so if I spend maybe an hour on the character, let's talk about the planning part. Then it depends. So you say like 200 frames? Now let's make it 240. You know,
Okay.
so it's 10 seconds. I might say maybe 3 hours, 3 to 4 hours on that. And really, because I'm knowing what my performance is going to be, but my planning is also going to be my video reference, or doing a lot more drawings or a lot more notes. You know, I'm going to be very specific on that. You know, so let's say that does take 4 hours. So there's half of your day right there. And quite honestly, the other half is blocking. You know, and you might even be able to do blocking in 2 hours, but let's just say it takes 4 hours. So now your first day, you've got your planning and your blocking done. Okay, so now you're done on that first day. The second day is, you know, first if the director sees it, any changes, but going into the blocking plus. And so I think that blocking plus would definitely take, like say that you did the blocking on Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday, and then Thursday and Friday would be polished. But here's what I'd also say is that Tuesday, Wednesday, and half of Thursday would be on blocking plus. I put a lot more time in my blocking plus than polish. I remember first shot that I did for the Neutron film, you know, I put so much into my blocking plus, and then when I polished it, you know, and I splined it, and I didn't show him finish. I said, well, here's the work in progress. It was just right after that. He goes, oh man, it looks really great. You know, spend the next day or two polishing, and I'm thinking, day or two? This is going to be done in 2 hours, dude. And I did. I mean, I finished it in like 2 hours. He goes, oh man, that's great. And it's like, yeah, because I think the mindset was, all right, cool, now you finished that stage, now spend 2 days polishing. It's like, why?
Yeah.
So I put all the work in the blocking plus, so I didn't have to put that much in polish. You know, I went through that whole steps of what I did in polish, and then the last thing is adding secondary action, and that's where I only focus on little things, you know, like that kind of stuff. A secondary action also is lip sync. You know, in the Anim Flow course, what I do is we don't do lip sync until the very last week, because here's the way I look at it: is lip sync is one of those things where really easy to do, kind of, and for us as animators, that we're like, look at the animator, look at the mouth's moving, look how cool that is, and you're like, yeah, that's great, but the body sucks. You know, it's terrible, but the mouth's moving. I would rather the other way. I'd rather let's get a really great performance, and if the lip sync is okay, it's still going to look awesome. You know, I mean, lip sync, you can't really mess it up unless it's off sync. That's really the worst part. But I look at it as icing on the cake. You know, let's make sure that cake is really tasty first, and then we'll put some really good icing on it. You know, so I don't spend that much time. So I think that if you break your week kind of like that, you know, that first day of planning and blocking, you might even see that once you start getting up to speed and getting faster, your blocking will be even faster. You know, so, and then the blocking plus, that's why I really would take that Tuesday, Wednesday, and half the day Thursday, and then do polish on, you know, Thursday and Friday, and there you go. You know, even 200 frames, because if you think about it, if you're going to spend, and I'm only talking 8-hour days, by the way, you know, you can do more, and you know, and I know the thing is like, man, I'm in a groove, and then you look up, and all of a sudden it's 10 o'clock, and then you're like, oh man, I didn't even realize. So that could happen, but I'm still saying that when we did 750 frames, we had guys that were working less than 50 hours. I mean, one guy was doing 40 hours, and he was cranking out some great stuff. So we were doing all right with that. So
Cool. Awesome.
cool.
Thanks, Mike.
Sure. There's a question from everyone else out here, and let's see. What do you think the current state of animation in America? Anything in particular you like and don't like? Let's see. The stuff that's going on now. I mean, like Frozen. I thought that was great, and it's actually a really good movie. I'm not a huge musical fan, but my kids loved it. I mean, I've got two girls, 14 and 12, and they absolutely loved it. And my 14-year-old's can sing like anything, so she's singing those songs. I'm like, hey, and I heard those songs before watching the movie. So I do like that. I like the more cartoony stuff, and I really focus on story, and I love Pixar stuff. Their trailers are terrible, though, man. Their trailers. I can't remember I remember the Finding Nemo trailer and saying, "Oh, this is the first stinker," and I'm really wrong on that. But their trailers are terrible because, like, even in Brave, there's not a single mention of the mother in that. And because I watched it, I'm like, okay, it's a typical whatever. It's like I was not interested in seeing it at all. And when I saw it, I'm like, why didn't they say something about this? This was so great, such a great story. And so that's how kind of I feel like that. And with the current state, I know that I have this guy that I used to work with. His name's Kirby Atkins. He was working on a film that was more adult, and it was like because like characters get killed in Disney films too, but like a main character got killed in camera, and it was kind of more adult themes. And not that kids can't handle it, but it wasn't like you didn't have a talking snowman in it, nothing like that. And I don't think that at least the Western culture was ready for that back then, and this was like almost 10 years ago, but maybe they are now. You had a movie like 9 that didn't do very well because that was better as a short, to tell you the truth. But at least there was an attempt, and I think that the audiences are starting to get used to that, and nowadays, and especially with how much money Frozen made, my God, I don't think animated movies have that stigma anymore of it's a kiddie movie, So I think that, and as those of us that have been growing up on Toy Story and movies like that, I mean, we love movies like that. It's not just animators that do, but it's a lot of people in their late 20s, 30s, and 40s. It's like we've had a lot of those movies, and so it's okay to Wreck-It Ralph. I loved Wreck-It Ralph. That story is awesome to me. The Incredibles, I cannot wait for Incredibles 2. I love the title because that movie was incredible. There's no question. Brad Bird to me is awesome, and so that's kind of how I feel where the current state of animation is right now. So let me go and Keith, you had another question in here too. Let's see. Well, I answered about the cameras. You said a lot of TV animation is still in 2D, but you're wondering if those studios hire 3D animators. Do you mean, if they would hire a 3D animator to work on a 2D show? Is that what you mean, or?
No, not necessarily. Just whether they have in-house animators that just deal with 3D stuff. Well, like maybe like Cartoon Network, those type of studios that are doing mainly like 2D stuff.
Yeah, I know that a lot of that. I don't know if they have it in-house. Nickelodeon had, when they were working on TAC, when we were doing Barnyard, and even in Barnyard, we had animation supervisors that were there that were in-house, but they only worked on that show. So I don't know if they would have like a 3D animator, like that could work on different shows. They might, but I'm not sure about that.
Okay.
And now I got another question from the audience here. Patrick, hey Patrick. He says, when you say lip sync should be done at the end, when do you recommend getting into other facial animation, eyes, emotional stuff? That's a great question. when we're blocking, we're going to put all that expression in the face at blocking. You know, I like to look at this approach, this whole kind of, you know, this anim flow that I'm doing. I look at it as like a 2D approach of how the 2D animators would do it. And they're not going to draw a character in a great pose and not even draw anything in the face. You know, so can you imagine that? It's like, here's a character. I'm so angry at you. Why are you making me cry? You know, that would be horrible. And so you want to put the emotion in there, and I think that completes the pose. I think that puts, you know, that finishes the line of action, that finishes the emotion that the character is putting in. And so I do the brows, I do the lids, I do the mouth, not lip sync, but the mouth. And so it's an expression. So you want to see kind of where the face is, and you know, like, are you out of your mind? What? I didn't know you could do that. You know, like that. And so I'll put that all in there, and then when I go in and do the lip sync, I'm not necessarily. I might have to delete a couple of frames, you know, just because I'm like, ugh, I can't make him do when his mouth's like this, you know. So I got to make some changes in there. But overall, it's still that expression. So I like to keep the expression there and then make him talk like this, you know, or what? That is crazy, you know. So he might talk a little bit more like that, or make the mouth a little bit different, you know. So those are the things that I'll put in lip sync. Now, as far as like eye darts, though, I don't put those in until I look at those as kind of secondary. Also, that's more of the icing on the cake. I'll put eye direction when I'm doing blocking and blocking plus. And blocking plus, that I might even do, like, if a character's going to look up like that, I'll have the eyes lead, and so I'll have the eyes up. I won't put a blank in it until polish, but I might have the eyes in one of my in-betweens get bigger, you know, because it feels like it lifts them up. I might even do a little bit of a squash and stretch in there too. You know, so that's kind of where that all goes. All right, so let me see. Here's another question that Kyle had. Establishing key pose I find kind of easy for developing your shot. The problem that I have is the breakdowns and in-betweens, making them interesting while still following an appropriate path of action. This is particularly difficult for me in an acting shot when the character moves very subtly over a long period of time. I got to tell you, the thing is, when you're doing that, when you're going for your in-betweens, is you can almost make them too. I like making my key poses very clear, but I don't want my in-betweens to just be an in-between. You know, I think that's kind of what you're saying too, is how do I make this strong? And I think part of that is actually the speeds. Remember I was talking about speeds earlier, is you can really make those in-betweens work and make those just as strong if you kind of blur the lines where your keyframes are. So if I have a keyframe here and I have the character then coming going into this, and even if I know that when they're down here, they might even say, what, you're out of your mind, you know, something like that. I won't put even that little head shake in there because I'm thinking ahead. All right, so I'm thinking, okay, I can still make that breakdown interesting in a cool-looking pose as a breakdown, but it's not finished yet. And I think what a lot of us have a problem with is that at each phase we're trying to make it almost perfect finished animation, you know what I mean? Instead of saying, all right, I got this step done, now when I go into polish, I'm going to add just that little head shake so I get this working, and then I'll add that. You know, so I think that's part of it. But I think that, I don't know, is there enough, did that kind of answer your question, I guess?
Yeah. Without going too much in depth with it, yeah, I think it helps for sure.
Cool. Okay. Very cool. And Veronica, did you have a question? Because I have you live. If not, that's all right.
Yeah. Well, I think I have a question more like in a workflow but maybe more like because I'm starting in the studio. Maybe in a system in a studio. I know that you're already directing, and maybe you can have some tips about the workflow in a studio.
And you mean not just animation, but in the entire workflow, like even with layout and lighting, or just in it? Yeah.
Maybe for the whole, but yeah, I think I'm starting a new project, a small project that maybe just for an animator. So
Okay.
maybe it will work if
Okay.
just for animation.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, you know, that first step is planning. I mean, that's the biggest thing. And if you have something set up where you can even get the animators maybe even into video reference, you know, so maybe there's some place that you can have them set up to do video reference and show them also how to make different choices, because that's the biggest thing. You know, like when I'm trying to direct animators, is I always give them ideas, but I don't want to pitch the exact thing to do. You know, put his arm here and all that. I mean, I might every once in a while, but not overall. And so I like to let them kind of play. But then, you know, the whole process of the blocking and the blocking plus and polish, you know, the blocking is the big thing. So I mean, if you're going to set it up, making sure that you have blocking reviews, I think is very important. What I also did was I did something called rounds, where, you know, like how doctors go around and see their patients, stuff like that. I would do that too, you know, at different times, not during the blocking, but really during the blocking plus and polish, to make sure that they were kind of hitting like milestones, is I think probably what you're trying to get for, I think, is like at what stage would you want to review it? You know, I like to look at an entire sequence, because we tried to do this at first. We tried to say, just block your shots out, and then as soon as you get the shot, we'll just look at them individually. That wasn't smart, and that didn't work. You know, we looked at an entire sequence. And even when I was reviewing final animation, the entire sequence had to be done. You know, so I looked at it that way. So the two milestones were, three of them were the pitching, you know, so you'd pitch that, and then you would do the blocking, and then we would have final and then retakes. You know, so that's how I would set it up, as like, for an animator, that would be their milestones. Does that kind of answer the question for that?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and it all depends on how many, you know, like we were talking about earlier, is how to do, you know, in that 5 days, and how many times to do it. You know, like for me, we eventually got into a flow where we were pitching on Mondays. I mean, it took a long time to get to that point, though, because, you know, you'd have holidays, you'd have all that kind of stuff, and so sometimes we'd pitch on a Tuesday, and the shots would be done on Monday, you know, and all that kind of stuff. And so that became a pain, because it was really nice to get in a flow of, all right, every Monday we're going to get a shot, and that means we're done on Friday. And so, hey, if I get my shot done at 2 o'clock on Friday, I'm out of here. You know, so I kind of like that. You know, I wish every week could have been like that, but that's what we strive to do. You know, so that kind of helped. So cool. That answer it, I hope. All right, cool.
Yeah, thank you.
Andy, Andreas, did you have any questions?
Well, I just want to, maybe you can give me an advice. What kind of shots would you put on a demo reel? So it's a very basic question, but
that's a great question, because I mean, I hear that a lot from students too. Is, what do I put on my demo reel? What do I do? And you have to look at your demo reel as it's not a history of your work. It's not like, here's what I've done 4 years ago. And I know that it's so tempting to put it on. I mean, I just looked at it really the other day, and there's some great stuff, and then there was this one part, and it's like, why'd you put that in there? And the thing is, as a director, and I've been on both sides, you know, as when I'd send out my reel, please give me a job, you know, that, and then when I'm looking at reels, I got to tell you, it's just as nerve-wracking when you're watching reels as when you're looking at, yeah, believe it or not. And I would, because the thing is, I would look at a reel, and if someone, we hired an animator one time that had one piece on the reel, that was it. But it was really great, and it was really short. It was just this magician that did this little flourish and then grabbed in a hat and pulled out a rabbit, and that was it. But what it showed was, it showed me that he understood all the principles, and so he understood what goes into a shot, and that was enough. We had another animator that had some work from a film that he worked on, but it said, and it was a group, and he said that he did some of the animation on it. Like, okay. And then another piece of animation was after that he just did on his own. Not very good, and it looked like he had done it before he worked on the film. And he ended up not being a very good animator. He's a lot more like, we hired him, but he was a lot more like what the end of his animation looked like. And so what I learned from that is, okay, this person didn't even know that that animation is not good. You know, and he put that on his reel. And so how is he going to know how to differentiate when he's working? You know what I mean? And so I look at it as, you put your best stuff on there. You know, what makes Keith asked, what are some things that make you cringe when you look at reels? I remember there's two things. One is when we used to look at VHS reels, you know, big videotapes. Sometimes some people would put them. They would spend so much time on packaging, and there was like big packages and stuff like that. And every single time there was a lot of work in the package, the animation was terrible. And there would always be some music with it. I mean, music I don't mind, but I always turn it down. And I have my demo reel, my direct reel, and I have music from Saw on it, but I'm putting pieces next to it. You know, so I'm kind of cutting them all together to show how I can direct. But stuff that makes me cringe, I don't like looking at walk cycles. That doesn't. If it's a game company, that's perfect. But I wouldn't put walk cycles on if you're going to try to get a film or television job. I wouldn't do that. I would put performance in it and kind of know who you're going to send it to. If you're going to send something to ILM, work on creature shots, you know, stuff like that. Not really cartoony stuff. If you're going to try at Pixar or Disney, don't put the creature stuff on it. You know, not realistic stuff. I would put more cartoony stuff on there. The way I look at it is this. You break your reels down by this and say, if you watch your piece, and now we're all our own worst critics, and so we're all going to say, it could be better. But if you look at it and go, I don't know, don't put it on. If it makes you question just a little bit, don't put it on. You know, I'll look at it and say, because I've made this mistake before. I thought, oh man, I've only got 2 pieces. I need to put a third one on there. So what did I do? I hurried up. I made something that I thought was going to be great, and when I'm working, I'm like, yeah, this is great. When I was finished, I was like, I don't know, but at least I got 3 pieces. Man, I should have never done that. I should have just kept with my 2 pieces and continued to work on something better and then replace that. You know, now if you've got 3 great pieces, that's awesome. But if you got 1, that's fine too. You know, like I said, I just saw this reel that there was like 5 different pieces in it, and the last one, I don't know why the person put it in there. It's almost like that's obviously something you did a year or 2 ago, but why put it in there? Because it's nowhere near as strong as these other ones. And for me, it made me think, well, which is the right animator? Was it this shot or was it this shot? You know, so I wouldn't even put that in there. So does that kind of help? I hope.
Awesome. So what do you think? If it's around a minute, is that okay? Or
Yeah, that's totally fine. Because, you know, I got to tell you, it should be your best stuff first. But yeah, if it's a minute, that's great. You know, because you got to think of it too. The person that's looking at it, we're not going to watch 5 minutes every single time of how many animators that there is. You know, and so you want to catch them and then almost like let them go, you know, really fast, so they can say, "Oh man, I want to see more of this. That guy's awesome." Or did you see the work she did? That's cool. You know, let's watch that piece again. And that's what you want. Not, okay, now here's another piece. Now here's another piece. Now here's another piece. You know, like that. You want to, like I said, that one piece with that magician, I don't even think it was a minute. And we hired him, and the guy's awesome. The guy's really good. You know, so I think that's all it's needed. So, all right, awesome. Let me see something else. There's another question that Kyle had too. You're talking about. Here's a thing that you said. As a student, is it more beneficial for me to work on animation exercise or more drawn-out shorts? Okay. Here's my thought on shorts is that I think if you want to enter them in film festivals and stuff like that, that's great. That's my whole thing when I did my short. That was the only thing that I wanted to do. I just wanted to work on a short film and get it out there. I was lucky and that Disney saw it. They actually saw it. I don't know how. I still, even the guy that hired me, he forgot how he saw it. But I had sent it to a friend or something, and he saw a work in progress, and they hired me before it was even finished. So, and I mean, it was some cool character piece, but I liked it for the story. And so, if it's for story, then do that. But I think it's more for animation exercises, meaning that, okay, do you want to do a subtle acting shot? Do you want to do an action shot? I think that's the thing. It's going to show you two things it's going to do. First, it's going to make you better, and then it's going to make your reel better. And that's really what we're trying to do. And here's a big thing, actually, to kind of combine that and the question about the reel, and I do this even to this day when I'm writing and directing, is you got to think that it's part of the process. If you think, oh my God, I got to get a job, oh my God, I got to do this, you're going to do a pretty bad job on your stuff. Instead of saying, you know what, I'm going to take my time and learn some subtle acting in here. I mean, it's only going to take me 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever, but I'm going to really focus on this. And so I'm going to find a piece that has a nice subtle thing, or maybe I'm going to do something where it's an over-the-top cartoony thing. And instead of thinking, oh, I got to do it for my reel so I can get a job, you think, I'm going to really take the time to learn this. Because here's what's going to happen, is that's going to be awesome in the end. Because you have that different attitude, you have that right attitude about it, and you're gonna take that fear and that anxiety, kind of. I know Patrick's still listening, and I bet he's saying, yeah, right, whatever. You'll still always have that anxiety and fear, but it definitely takes it out. And it allows you to focus on just your animation. And so that's what I would say to do, is if you want to do a short, you can do the short, but I wouldn't do that for a reel. Okay, does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I've been wanting to do a short for a long time, but I got to start working soon too. So.
yeah, I know, and that's the hard thing too. Is, okay, where do I would like to do this, but I would also like to do this. Here's the thing though, is I know that some people will say, well, you don't have time when you're working. Yeah, you do. You just need the time for it, so you will have time for it. So that's the way I would look at it. I try to make myself as good as I can. I looked at that thing with directing. Now I was thrown to the fire, with directing. But I said, instead of going, oh man, how am I going to learn this? I said, all right, here's what I'm going to learn. There's an exercise that I like animators to do when you're trying to learn about performance. Because listen, the part with animation is there's two different parts. There's three different parts really. There's the fundamentals, there's the workflow, how do I get from an idea to a finished shot, and then there's also acting, which takes a really long time to understand. And so there's a lot of things that we have to, like take acting courses, take improv courses. There's some other things that I like to do too, is I always tell animators is to watch a movie with your eyes closed. Like, what? You take a scene, now you got to do this with somebody else. You got to do this with somebody else, and you say, all right, I'm going to watch this next part that's going to come up. I have no idea what's going to happen, but I want to hear the audio. All right, and you'll play it and have your friend or whatever play it, and you hear the line, and then you kind of think, okay, what am I going to do? And you can even do this with, like, if you're going to find an audio file or something like that, find a file, and this isn't something you're going to animate, but you hear it and say, how would I perform that? And then watch what the actor's choice was. And so do something like a film that you've never seen before, an actor you've never seen, and you'll see and say, oh, wow, look what he picked up that glass. I'd have never thought about that. Or look how he looked around here. Oh, man, that was crazy. There's a shot of Tom Hanks in Charlie Wilson's War. And actually in Anim Flow, in one of my lectures, I actually go over this shot. But it's really cool because I'm talking about secondary action. And if you remember the movie, there's a part in there where I think he went to Las Vegas and had a hooker or something like that. And so now they're trying to smooth it over. They're actually in Washington, and his 4 assistants come in, and they're trying to spin the story. And Philip Seymour Hoffman is coming in also at the same time, so he gets up and leaves as Tom Hanks is trying to smooth the story over. And you really get into his character of him thinking, and inside you can hear him saying, oh my God, how am I going to fix this? What am I doing? I give him and it's really cool because he does little things like this, and he does it so slow that his eyelid like literally goes like that. It's really weird. So I'm looking at it saying, I would have never thought about that. You know, now some of that is instinctive for him, but you know, as us as animators, there is no such thing as instinct. It's not like we're gonna put it in Maya and say, "Oh wow, look what Maya did for me. That was instinct." We have to move the lids. We've got to move the brows. We've got to put that finger there, make it bend, and make it do that. We've got to do every little part. Whereas that's why I said actors got it easy. You know, it's like they can just sit up there and do it, and then they're done. We've got to move every little thing. You know, it's instinct for us. But so we have to act also. You know, so we have to think of that, and so that's something that I think we all have to work on. You know, so if you're talking about like exercises, those are the kind of exercises that I would do, because that'll make you learn a lot more.
Okay.
And you did have questions kind of about anim flow, and you know like what would you say? What kind of exercises or something? What kind of assignments? Yeah. Okay. And how much time will the assignments take? Okay. What I'm doing is a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about here. We spend. You know, you said how you got to do it in a week. Well, what I like to do is let's figure out how to do this, and we take an entire week per thing. You know, so then when we're going through our character, that's 1 week. When we're going through planning a video reference and everything, because I want you to make sure that, yeah, you might be able to do it in a day, but we're going to do it in a week. And in that week, we've got lectures that go along exactly with what I'm talking about. We have like something very similar to this, you know, like a Google Hangout, where I talk about something specific and we go back and forth. And then we also have a group critique where, you know, say there'd be 2 students that we're going to say, okay, we're going to look at Keith's and Kyle's shot today. You know, so now we're going to critique it. And that's in addition to me critiquing, you know, wherever you are at that point. And so we really beat up every single phase. I mean, I even go through, when we go through blocking or blocking plus, we do just anticipations. Because the reason why is I go through why it's important and all that kind of stuff and how to see it even in live action films is I want to show you that even the most minimal anticipation should be in your shot. Because I used to, like, even with my animation mentor students, I'd say, well, put anticipations and breakdowns. And not everyone would put anticipations in. And I'm like, it's so important. That makes your shot so much better. So I figured that if you break it down and you can only do anticipations this week, and you'll learn and say, oh, man, that little, like, I'm just moving my head from here to here, but if I do tiny anticipation, that makes it so much better. And so when you do your shot that you have to do in a week, you know, okay, remember anticipations, because I remember when we did that, it worked like that. And so that's why I'm almost like put the brakes on everything and say, all right, now we're going to do this. Now we're going to do this. Now we're going to do this. Instead of, all right, hurry up, get your animated shot done, and now let's move on to another one. I want to make sure every single step is taken, you know, is gone through very methodical like that. So that's kind of where that's going to go.
Cool. Awesome. I think that's a good way to do it, because you know, doing it right the first time, doing it slow, and then you build up speed doing it right.
Exactly. That's exactly it. Because what I like to do is I take out all of the, and I like to say I take out the mystery and the magicalness of animation, because I had a student then, and I used her work quite a bit, like even just to show the phases, because she actually said, Annette, if you guys know her, she actually said at one point, you know what, I'm going to follow this all the way through, and I'm going to see what happens, and you should see her work now. It's awesome. I mean, it was good to start, but right now she did, and I remember her even saying, can I do lip sync now? And it's like, not until last week. And there was another student too that was like, every single week, now lip sync. And I was like, nope, until the end. And he's grateful for that too. He goes, you know, I wanted to do that, but look how much better it ended up. It's, yes, because I don't want you focusing on that. I want you to focus on this, because it's only one thing. You know, like when we go in the blocking plus, you start thinking, oh my God, secondary action. Oh my God, overlap, drag, spacing. I got to do this, and instead, we're only going to do anticipation. Don't worry about that. When we do our main breakdowns, you are going to think of drag and overlap and spacing and that kind of stuff, but we're going to do it on a breakdown level. And that allows you to, oh man, okay, now I can do this. You know, so that's pretty cool. You know, so yeah, you're right. And then when you got to do it in a week, you can't. You know, you're not going to be like, oh man, I had 5 days to do this, now I got to do it in 5 hours. No, you'll be able to. Let me see if there's anything else with that question. Can the workshop be taken more than once, or is that what the one-on-one? Oh, okay. There's a couple of different things actually that I'm trying to do. Is the you know, the workshop is the whole 10-week thing, and that includes all the critiques. You know, that, like I said, every week you're going to have. I've got 1 or 2 lectures, and the thing is, the lectures aren't like 20 minutes long. They're right to the point. And, you know, some of them are 5 minutes, some of them are 10. So that way you can watch it again, and there's a lot of great stuff in there. There's some stuff that, like, even Andreas, that he and I have been going, and I was like, dude, you got to check this out. Like, I myself, and I'm like, you got to see this. It's so cool. He's like, oh, man, that's awesome. But it made me get excited about it, so that was pretty cool. You know, the critiques, what I also like to do in the critiques is I'm not going to do just a little 4-minute thing, or you can look at things, is what we've been told at another place. I look at the entire animation, you know, and I also do this is, you know, like when you, sometimes if you get a critique, you might have a little bit of the mentor going like this at the very beginning. You know, kind of looking at it before. Well, I watch it before and I write down notes. And so the critique, even if it's only 4 minutes, it's 4 minutes of notes on everything. You know, so you'll get that every week. So what you were asking about the one-on-one, that's for people that if they don't want to take the workshop, they can just get a one-on-one critique. Like if you have a piece of work that you've maybe gotten done already, and you say, hey, I want to take a look at this and get more notes. That's what that is. So Kyle, it's a little bit different than what the overall workshop is.
Cool. Thanks, Mike.
Sure. Well, cool. Well, do any of you have any questions here? I know that I didn't see any more questions. Oh, wait, there's another one. Let's see. Let's see what it is. You once gave me a great tip about offsetting in-betweens as opposed to offsetting the timing of keys to avoid tweaking. Yeah. I found it really helpful. When I hear the word offset, it usually makes me cringe because I think offset of, hey, let's go into my graph editor and now let's move this. How easy is that to clean up your graph when you've got keyframes everywhere? Is that a nightmare? You know, sure, Kyle, that's cool. See ya, take care, dude. See ya. I know that doing that, man, when I open up my graph editor and I start playing with it, and I'm just my eyes cross and I don't even know what I'm doing. You know, so what I do with offset is this. Is I look at the breakdowns, you know, because like I use this very, very simple thing. Is I've got my hands here and then my hands here, right? And so this is a keyframe here, a keyframe here. When I go to, and what I want is to make them feel like they hit at different times. They're going to still hit at the same frame. They're still going to end at frame 10, frame 20. But what I do is for my breakdown, my main breakdown, is I go through, and that's when I start talking about speeds, right? So I don't want them to happen at the same speed. So this looks as very twinning. You know, it's like they're twins. They look like there's a mirror right down here, and each arm have the same time. So when I go down to my breakdown, I might go here, and I've got some tricks in Maya that'll kind of put me in the ballpark. But what I'll do now is I'll say, wait a minute, I want this hand to be a little bit slower, and this hand to be faster. Now I'll do some drag on my hand. So if I do, like maybe even if I do it from here, I have a little bit of drag there, and I'm doing that. I'm bending my fingers back. But I do it on my breakdown here, and so it makes it feel like they happen at different times. And then I might even add another in-between. So if I go keyframe, breakdown, before I go to my next keyframe, I might add another in-between here where this hand is already in the spot. So it's already there. So then I'll go there and say, okay, it's there. My hand here is still like here. So it feels like it's offset, but I did it. I'm just in control with the keys. I'm not going to randomly say, oh, well, I need my hand to hit 2 frames later, so I'm just going to go and in my graph editor, grab my hand and move it there. Man, you just killed all your poses and everything. But if you're in control of all your keys like that, I think that's so much better. And if you go through and start thinking of your breakdowns like that, I think that helps a ton. And that's the biggest thing. And I remember that when that's like a light bulb moment too, is that when you first see that, you're like, I never thought about doing it like that. And when you see it play, you're like, oh, that looks so cool. You know, and then you put it in polish, and you already have all those keyframes there. You're like, I don't need to do anything except maybe bend my fingers back a little bit more, that kind of stuff. So that's always a nice little thing there. So all right. Well, we got a ton of questions answered. I hope. I think we're going to be doing a couple of these for sure. You know, because I like doing this, and then always be connecting on the website and at animflow.com. So I'll check that out if you guys can. If you haven't heard about it, you know, try check that out. Because I think that this course is something that I've been wanting to do it for a while, and I love the line that someone gave to me the other day: "Is you don't know you need this." Because as two of my students are still here that can attest to it, is that they didn't know kind of that they needed it. I mean, I know it sounds weird, but it's like going through this whole process, I think, opens up your eyes to, hey, I can animate like that. You know, when you look at a shot from Frozen or you look at a shot from The Incredibles and you're like, there's no way I can do that. Yeah, you can. When you break it down, because they've done it the same way. They start out with planning, they did blocking, they did their blocking plus. They might do a little bit of different stuff, you know, in that kind of process. But still understanding those real key principles like that, how to get from blocking plus into polish, and understand, here's how I do anticipation, here's how I do overlap, here's how I do drag. When you do that there, all of a sudden you're like, oh man, my animation is pretty cool. That's awesome. It takes that magic away from it. So I'm not answering the question that someone just asked me. It has nothing to do with anything.
So just another little question, Mike. So if you move out from stepped, you personally, do you directly go to splines, or do you use plateau tangents, or?
Oh yeah, I actually, you know, talk about we were saying how, or I was saying how we're very like shiny object people. Is one thing that for me, when I would go from step to spline, is before auto tangent, I could not, if I just splined it and hit play, my feet would always move. Because here's the thing too, is when we're going through blocking and blocking plus, I always say move your feet. Even if it's just a little bit of a rotation, or the character is going to take a step forward, you're going to move everything. And when I go into polish, I'd see those feet slide. I'd literally go like this. I couldn't look at anything else. And so I got to a point where I would make sure I flattened those feet out first until auto tangent came around. And so I use auto tangent when I go from step mode into, because that makes the keys a little bit better, and it gets rid of that. So that's what I use. I know some people even use linear, you know, but you know, auto tangent works for me. That's just works for me. So.
But don't you get all that little overshoots if you?
No, auto tangent actually gets rid of that. You just went to slide. Well, it doesn't with you, because I haven't seen it. You know, because like that's what the perfect part is. Like when I have the feet like that, it has that natural shoot. Auto tangent actually gets rid of that.
Well, maybe I have the overshoots because I haven't done the blocking right.
That could be it. You need more keyframes.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I always tell people. If they're like, well, my polish still doesn't. I said, you need more keyframes. Like you in charge, not the computer.
True.
All right, everybody. Cool, though. We got a good hour and a half in. So for those of you that were just listening in, I hope you had fun. And you can always email me or Facebook. I am on all the time. Just ask Andreas. I live pretty much on my computer. So when I'm not waiting, I'm always on it. So all right, everybody. So take care, and we'll see you hopefully soon.
Great. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Sure. Thanks.
Thanks so much. It was great.
Take care, everybody.
Awesome.
Bye-bye.